class. Welcome to the video that will help you understand the data analysis assignment, part 1. This is the first large assignment that you have in the course. It's due on March 1st, so you've got a few weeks to work on it. It's a good thing you're watching this because parts of it can be a little confusing. I want to make sure I step you through. And this old video will tell you everything you need to know. So everything I'm going to be talking about, all the templates, the link to submit, this video, it's in the assignments folder. So what you do is you click on course material, click on the folder at the top of the page, assignments. Once you click on that, you'll see the folder for this assignment, analyzing and visualizing assessment data to guide instruction. This assignment is really helpful in helping you do a deep dive into data, in particular, this case, students' quiz data, to help you answer questions about what they're learning, what learning targets they're learning or mastering and which ones they're not. Valuable skill if you have to do the EDTPA, that certification test that comes at the end of your program. So if you click on Analyzing and Visualizing Assessment Data to Guide Instruction, you'll find the materials for this assignment. Now we're inside the folder. You can see the instructions and template that this video will be going through. In case you want to download those and follow along, you can pause the video and look at them, or you can just watch this video and go there later. I am going to ask that you do your assignment directly on the template. If you hand in an assignment that's separate from the template, I have trouble connecting sometimes the text with what your question you're responding to, so I may ask you to copy and paste it onto the template. This assignment, by the way, is worth 10% of your grade, part 1. Part 2, which will be an extension in a few more weeks, is also worth 10%. So in total, this assignment is worth 20% of your grade. You'll notice some other things in the folder besides the template. You have the videos to help you understand this, and you have the link to submit once you're finished with the assignment. So everything I'm going to be showing you is once again in the assignment folder, where the major assignments are kept, and these are the instructions and template. Now the first thing I'll say right away is don't do this assignment on a blank page. Bring up the template, follow the instructions on the template, and do your work directly on this template. If you do submit it on a blank page, I have to go back and forth and try to figure out what question you're on. It's not always apparent. So what I'm probably going to do is just submit it back to you and say put it on the template. So this assignment is worth 20% of your grade. Part 1 is worth 10%, Part 2 is worth 10%. And the reason that you have this assignment is to teach you about data analysis in terms of assessment. That is, when you give a quiz or a test or any type of graded project, you're going to want to be able to look and understand patterns of learning within your class. Things like, okay, who are the students that are achieving the learning objectives? Who's struggling with it? Who's excelling, who's kind of in the middle. So you're going to go through a hypothetical situation where you get to analyze some data. The learning objectives here are provided here. What we're going to do is we're going to be taking a look at a 4th grade science quiz on survival and adaptations in just a minute. Now I realize that not all of you are in childhood education. Some of you might be in early childhood, some of you might be adolescent. For the purposes of this assignment, that's not what's important. What's important is to be able to look at data and analyze it for patterns of learning. So you're going to be learning techniques here that you can apply later in your own class to your own assessments. This assignment is also very helpful because it will help you understand how to analyze data for the EDTPA. So the EDTPA, you probably know, is a certification test that you that you take while you're student teaching. It requires that you film a class and then give an assessment. Part of that at TPA is looking at assessment and how well your students are understanding what you're teaching and how do you know that. So this will help you with the Ed TPA. Before we get started, there's a glossary of 3 terms that you have to know what they mean. Frequency is the number of times a data value occurs. So, for example, look at that first example, the words apple, apple, orange, orange, orange. The frequency of apple is 2 because there are 2 apples in that. In the number example, 110011, the frequency of 1 is 4 because there are 4 ones in that. The second word is usually what we think of as an average, but we're going to call it a mean here. So if you remember your elementary math, 2 plus 4 plus 6, well, that would be 12 divided by 3. The number of numbers is 4. So mean is just an average. It's a type of average. There are other averages as well, but we won't get into that. Percentage, you have to know how to calculate a percentage. It's okay to use calculators in this assignment, but just if you wanted to do it manually, let's look at the example. Jane got 30 items correct on her 60 items test. The portion correct is 30. The whole number of items is 60, so you could divide the portion she got correct, 30, by 60, and that would give you 0.5. And then you always multiply the result by 100. So 0.5 times 100 is 50. So 50%. She got 50% correct. Again, if you don't want to do that by hand, you can use a calculator. So let's see what you're going to do. The directions say, imagine that you gave a formative assessment consisting of 12 quiz items. So that keyword formative means we're not finished teaching, right? We're giving a quiz to see, in the middle of instruction, to see how well students are mastering the concepts we're teaching. And so the quiz itself, which I'll show you in a minute, is actually located in Appendix A of this document. So the quiz has 12 items. Remember, it's 4th grade. And each of the items was aligned with a particular New York State standard for 4th grade life science. So let's look at the 2 standards that are given here. I'm sorry, 1 standard and 2 learning targets. So the standard itself is LS1. This is the actual New York State Science 4th grade life science standard. Plants and animals have internal and external structures that function to support survival, growth, behavior, and reproduction. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? Plants and animals have structures and they function to allow them to exist. So this particular quiz has 2 learning targets that are aligned with that standard. Learning target 1. Students will be able to identify plant and animal structures that support survival with 80% or more accuracy. Learning target 2, students will be able to analyze, describe, and explain concepts related to adaptation with 80% or more accuracy. So the first learning target is about their structures. The second learning target is about adaptation. And those are both aligned with the standard. So we're clear so far, and I want you to also focus that students have to get 80% or more of the questions correct for you to consider that they've mastered that target. 80%. Keep that number in your head. Let's take a look at the quiz. This is found in Appendix A. You can see there are 4 multiple choice questions. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can look over there. So what do animals need to survive? What's the main purpose of a plant's flower? Which color will best protect a rabbit from a hawk in a snowy field? Which adaptation provides protection from predators? And you can see naturally that some of these questions line up with the first learning target about structures. So for example, number 1. And others line up more with adaptations. So like numbers 3 and 4. You can see that kind of breakdown already. There are 2 fill in the blanks questions 5 and 6. This is like a short answer. 7 and 8 are true, false. And 9, 10, and 11, I'm sorry, fill in the blank was fill in the blank. 9, 10, 11 are the short answers, so they would be able to answer that in a few sentences, whereas fill in the blank is like a word or a phrase. And then there's one extended essay, which is a paragraph or two that they have to write for number 12. So you've got a mix of question formats. Then you see this statement: explain the hypothetical results of 10 students who completed the quiz in table 1 below. 1 means they answered the question correctly and earned a point. 0 means they did not answer the question correctly. So if you look, for example, running across the top, you see the question numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and right above that, in the very first row, you see the type of question it was. So question 1 was a multiple choice, question 2 was a multiple choice, 3 was a multiple choice, 4 was a multiple choice, 5 was a fill in the blank, and so forth. Below that, on the third row, you see the learning target that each question is aligned with. So the first question, as we said, is aligned with learning target 1 about the structures. The second question is learning target 1 about the structures. The third question is learning target 2 about adaptation. The fourth question is learning target 2 about adaptation. And you can go across and see what each question is aligned with, which learning target. Now, cognitive process is about how simple or advanced the skill that the students are being asked to do. So question number 1, multiple choice, is a very simple skill. They're just being asked to recognize which answer is correct and the list of responses. Similarly, recognize here. Questions 3 and 4 are a little bit more advanced. They're asking them to analyze some information and select a correct answer. You can go across and see the fill in the blank. It's just simple recall. Define is simple. Those are the true, false. Describe is more advanced. That's the one where they had to write a couple of sentences. And explain is the most advanced. That's where they have to write the most. So that relates to how simple or difficult, or advanced rather, the skill that they're being asked to do is. Then you have the listing of 10 students starting with Agnes and going through to Lee, and their scores. So you can see that Agnes has a 1 in question 1. That means she got question 1 right. Chris did not get question 1 right. If you look, he has a 0 next to his name. So you can see all of the students' scores for questions 1 through 12. Now the bottom row and also the last column are reserved for some calculations that you're going to need to do. So right now, what I'm trying to get you to do is just understand the existing numbers that are in there, except for the far right column and the bottom row, and we're going to go over that. So this begins part 1 of the things you have to do. This is due October 19th. Part 2 is due later, and this video won't cover that. So step 1 is to do some initial data analysis. And for that, you're going to want to calculate some total things by students and by question items. And so let's see what it says. You're interested in how each student did and in your overall class performance. So you're going to calculate 3 things: your frequency of correct responses on the quiz, that's A, the frequency of correct responses on each item, that's B, and the C is the overall class item average. So for example, if you take a look at A, the frequency of correct responses on the quiz by student, that's going to go where the blue arrow is in the last column. The first one's done for you. And so you just want to know what each student's score is. That's saying, what is each student's score? So for Agnes, I can add up all her 1s, 1 and 1 and 1 and 1, all the way across, And I can see she only missed one. There were 12 questions. She got 11 out of 12. So 11. So you're going to do that for all your students, and that's the frequency of correct responses in the last column. Then, where the red arrow is on B, you want to see how many students got each item right. So this is the frequency of correct responses on items. So you can see if you add up all for multiple choice, question number 1, all the ones, you can see that 8 students got that right. So again, this is by student, this is by test item or quiz item. So you're going to do that all the way across and see for each question how many students got that right. And then in the final box, which is the last column, last row, on the bottom right, you're going to calculate an average, a class average. And what you're going to do is you're going to take all of the scores above it, above the column, and you're going to add them up. So for example, Agnes got 11 right. You're going to add up how many Bob got, how many Chris got, how many Debbie got, get a number and divide by 10. And so I don't know what the number is offhand, but I don't have the answer key in front of me. But let's just say it was 90. Let's just say the total came to 90 of all the scores in the right column. Then 90 divided by 10 would be 9. So the average score would be a 9 on the quiz. So you're going to do that and calculate those 3 numbers as a first step. The next thing you want to do is to move to table 2. And this is some additional analysis by overall achievement and learning target. Let's see what it says. You are interested in your students' achievement on the quiz and on the 2 different learning targets. So you want to see what they got overall on the quiz, but also how'd they do in understanding the first learning target about structures, how'd they do the second learning target about adaptations, because maybe they were really weak in one area and strong in another area, and that would tell you some things about reteaching. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to calculate totals and percentages for each student on the quiz and for each learning target. And by the way, each part of the assignment shows you the value for your assignment in terms of points. Let's see what you're going to do. The first thing you have to do is to enter some data that you've already calculated into table 2 below. So I recommend doing this in Excel, but you can do it by hand. You can just simply type this in Excel and you can enter the data. However, if you prefer to do it by hand, that's fine. So let's see, we've already copied over the information for Agnes. So Agnes had, remember, 11 correct responses. And since there were 12 items, Agnes got a 91.7. If you do the math, 11 by 12 times 100 is 91.7%. Now you're going to have to calculate how many, or count, how many questions did she get right on Learning Target 1, and how many did she get right on Learning Target 2, and then you're going to do the percentages. Remember, there are 6 questions for Learning Target 1 and 6 questions for Learning Target 2. She got 6 right for Learning Target 1, so her score for Learning Target 1 over here, LT1 achievement level, is 100%. She only got 5 questions for Learning Target 2, so 5 out of 6 is 83.3%. So she did better on Learning Target 1. So the first thing you're going to do, like I said, is transfer the correct responses from the last column of Table 1 to the first column of Table 2. So if you look back in Table 1, 11 was in the last column. We simply put it in the first column here. You're going to transfer all the students' numbers over. And then you're going to calculate what percentage is correct out of 12. So if it was 12 out of 12, it would be 100%. 11 out of 12 is 91.7%. You can do the math for other numbers and put that in the second column. Then you have to separate, go back to table 1 and see which questions are aligned with learning target 1 and which questions are aligned with learning target 2, like we talked about, and count them. How many did she get right on learning target 1? How many did she get right on learning target 2? And you're going to put the raw numbers where the blue arrows are. Finally, you're going to take those numbers and calculate percentages. And remember, this time, we're not dividing by 12 because each learning target is only 6. So 6 out of 6 is 100%. 5 out of 6, as we saw before, was 83.3%. And so you're going to do that for each. You're going to put those numbers in the final 2 columns, and you're going to do that for each student. At the end, after you've done it for each student, you're going to calculate these numbers for class totals. So you want to know how your class did on these learning targets as a whole, not just by students. What did your overall class performance look like? So it looks harder than it is. Basically, what you're going to do is sum the numbers up, how many they got right in this first column, and put the total at the bottom in the last row where it says class totals. And then you're going to put all of the, you're going to take that number, don't average the percentages, take that number that's in the first column and divide it by 120. Why? Because there are 12 questions on the quiz and there are 10 students. So there are possible 120 correct responses. Now you're not going to have 120 correct responses, but remember that's the total possible. So let's say there were 90 correct responses. 90 divided by 120 would be 0.75. Multiply that by 100 and you get 75%. So that would mean the average score on the quiz was 75%. And you're going to put that in the second column where the second blue arrow is. You're going to do the same going across. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to calculate the percentage of class that met learning targets. Now remember, what was the target that they had to master? Well, it was 80%. Remember, so with 80% accuracy. So you've been wondering all semester probably why we have these learning targets. And now you're going to see. So the first thing you're going to see is that you have the 2 learning targets broken out in the rows. And basically you just have to say, okay, well, how many met that learning target? So you're going to go back to table 2. You're on table 3 now, but you're going to go back to 2 and you're going to say, look in that column that says achievement learning level by learning target, and you're going to say how many are at or above 80% and count them. So maybe you have 8 students that met learning target 1 and 2 students that didn't. Remember, it needs to add to 10 because there are 10 students. So in the first column, you're going to put 8. And then over here in the third column, you're going to put 2. Students who met the learning target, students who did not meet the learning target. And then what percentage out of the whole? So 8 out of 10 would be 80% met it, 2 out of 10, 20%. And then you're going to do the same thing with learning target 2. That's it. You're going to save your template, submit it to the link by the due date. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Now, you will be able to revise and resubmit this based on my feedback. When you do part 2, you're just simply going to add it to the template and submit it along with part 1 as well. So everybody, please don't get confused. If this is a confusing lesson, please feel free to email me. I'll be happy to meet with any of you via Zoom if we need to do that. Thank you.